Welcome in to BKL Nightly. Thanks for spending your Wednesday with me. I am Rachel Liebert, and we're back. We haven't been here for about a week as the Bills have obviously had their bye week. But we are back with everything you need to know, all of the action from Orchard Park ahead of this Week 8 matchup against the Carolina Panthers. So, of course, we got to start things off, as we always do, with some injury updates out of Orchard Park today. 3 Bills did not see the practice field today. We'll start with Josh Palmer. He had an ankle and a knee injury. We saw him go down against the Falcons, their last loss in Week 6. So he did not practice today. No update, obviously, regarding his status for this weekend. We'll keep you updated with that. Taylor Rapp also did not practice today. He has a knee injury, and Daquan Jones is dealing with a calf injury. But we do have some good practice news. Max Hairston returned to practice for the first time since his injury back in training camp. July 29th, I believe, was the date of that. It was an LCL sprain. He is still on injured reserve, so he is in that 21-day practice window. The Bills can opt to put him on the 53-man roster within that window, or they can choose that he's not healthy enough and they're going to keep him on injured reserve, which means he would not see the field this year and would be out for the remainder of the season. But it was a good sign today. He's at practice, was in limited capacity, but moving around, still has a brace on that right knee. But still, all things considered, I mean, looking pretty good for Max Hairston here. We'll keep you updated with any, updates that come along with that and with his injury status. But today he was back out there for the first time in several months. So good things looking, things looking good for the rookie corner there, first round pick for the Bills. All right, so Max Hairston, as I said, made his return, and it's kind of the coaches have been talking about the expectations of his return. You got to ease into it. He didn't practice a lot of training camp. Obviously has missed the entirety of the season so far, and he's a rookie, so he doesn't have any professional experience. So they're kind of trying to ease back into things with just getting him integrated back in with this team. But Max Hairston, he has a pretty positive outlook on the situation, and his coaches are kind of, positive in the way that they're managing his return.
When I found out what the injury really was, I was just happy that it wasn't like an ACL or something surgical. So when I found out that it was something that could be healed without surgery, I didn't complain. I just, kind of took it to the chin and just look at it as a blessing in disguise. Just trusting my Lord and Savior and never losing faith.
He's missed a lot of time, a lot of football, a lot of affirmation of, hey, yes, that's what they want. That's how it's supposed to look. I've got to do a better job. It's not quite where we need it to be. So it's a journey. And again, I think managing expectations. I know managing expectations is important for us.
You miss as much time as I did. It takes a little bit of messing up but just knowing that I did what I could do off the field mentally to learn the playbook, to learn the scheme, to see how people react, to see certain matchup with how my teammates look versus opposing guys, and just being able to wait until I got my turn. And now that I'm back out practicing, just treating practice like a game for real. So when I do get to the game, that it just feels like a practice with a crowd, and just staying positive, but really just having the mindset of don't let the guy to the left of me, the guy to the right of me down.
So it sounds like a pretty positive mindset there from the rookie. He's back on the practice field, but we did have some other injury updates out of Orchard Park today. Just a few, 4 limited guys. Dalton Kincaid limited with the oblique injury that caused him to miss Week 6 against Atlanta. He came off of that pretty solid performance against New England. 108 receiving yards, a team high there, even though that was a loss for the Bills. And then he was out the week following. So limited status today. We'll keep you updated as that goes along as well, being, one of Josh Allen's main targets this season. So it could be big for the Bills if he returns this weekend. Also, Curtis Samuel was limited today. He's got a rib injury, and in the linebacker room looking a little bit banged up today. Terrell Bernard limited with an ankle injury. And then Matt Milano still dealing with that pectoral injury. He re-aggravated a few weeks ago. He's kind of been dealing with that all season. So we'll keep an eye on that and see, where he goes this weekend. All right, so we talked about Hairston making his return to the practice field. We also had 2 other guys make their return to the practice field today. Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi. They were suspended the first 6 games of the season for violating the NFL's policy against performance-enhancing drugs, and it's hard to believe we've already reached the point where they are able to return. Today was their day 1 back at practice, and Thad Brown was in Orchard Park, got to catch up with them and just see, how they're handling things and what they look to do for this team as they make their way back onto the practice field.
Michael Hoyt said it felt like his 6-game suspension went by kind of fast. He and Larry Ogunjobi talked on Wednesday about how they have managed the last 6 weeks. Hoyt said he did some training at nearby Hamburg High School, where the kids were happy to have him and to humble him inadvertently.
A couple times in the morning as the school buses kind of pulled up, they were like, Joey Bosa, Joey Bosa. I was like, not quite, but you're really close. You just kind of take it day by day. And, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish that day, you just get through it. And then next thing you know, it's, you're prepping for Week 8 Carolina.
It sucks, but then again, it's like you got to take it as it comes. So just took it in stride, put my head down and just worked. And, I'm excited to get back out there and make plays.
Despite a 2-game losing streak, Hoyt and Ogunjobi aren't trying to be the cavalry for the Bills. They're not trying to be heroes.
How you win football games is you do what your defense is supposed to do each and every snap. And, Larry and I are just going to be kind of another piece of that. We're not trying to, come in and, necessarily change too much.
I think it's just me and Mike coming back, being able to, just help how we can. We want to rally. We want to kind of get this thing going in the right direction and, just win.
Just about every football coach would tell you, bad things happen. We sort of chase plays or, you're trying to just do too much and play hero football. That's not really how it goes. I'm, not looking to, have this be like a measuring stick by any means. All I'm trying to do is get the play call, get lined up, be in the right spot, play team football, and then when good things happen, celebrate with my teammates.
Ogunjobi got a question about whether he felt helpless watching the last 6 games, but he said that's not the case. As a veteran, he understands the Bills' situation. I've been to the Super Bowl, and I've been 0-16, he said. I understand that there's ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs. The biggest thing is to stay together to get this back on track.
All right, so we will have to see if the addition of those 2 defensive linemen can help the Bills. We know they've come off of 2 straight losses. It wouldn't, be any harm to add some new guys into the mix, into the defense that has struggled a little bit these last 2 games. We'll see. I remember in preseason, Thad and I were the preseason game against the Giants, I believe. Thad and I, Michael Hoyt looked really good. Now, it was against kind of the second teamers and, getting snaps, not with the starting offense, lining up against the starting offense. But Michael Hoyt looked good. So I'm excited to see specifically him if he brings anything to this team. We don't know what their status is for Sunday yet, but just as far as making an impact, even in the leadership role, even in the practice role, just what they will be able to do for this team moving forward. All right, so it is now time for our weekly roundtable segment. Thad Brown, Josh Reed, and Carl Jones were out in Orchard Park today following the Bills practice and, talked more about this return of Hoyt, of Ogunjobi, talked more about the importance of this game this Sunday because the Panthers are 4-3. They've had games where they're not looking like a great team, but the record shows they're 4-3. They did beat the Falcons 30-0. They shut out the Falcons, who obviously beat the Bills. So the 3 of them talked about what to look for this upcoming game and just who could be an impact player coming this Sunday.
Time now for the BKL Nightly Roundtable. I'm joined by Carl Jones, Josh Reed. Bills getting ready to take on the Panthers. Guys, the Bills are getting back a couple of what we think will be important defensive line players this week. Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt back from suspension. How much of an impact do you think those 2 guys can make?
I think maybe more so Michael Hoyt. And in particular, his mentality and the way he plays the game. I think this defense lacks some guys who can literally break stones. And I think he has that type of personality that he will get after it. He is not 0 to 100. He is 100 all the time. I think that is what this defense lacks right now.
I also think that he'll help slot some players into some more defined roles and also allow Joey Bosa to play 50 to 60% of the snaps because prior to his arrival to the scene, Joey Bosa was playing 70 to 80% of the snaps, and that was no one's plan way back when they signed him back in March. So I think that's also a big part where Michael Hoyt will help.
To that point, I think Bosa really has not been very good on first and second down against the run and stopping those plays. Not that he's been terrible, but I think the Bills can do better there. And I think Michael Hoyt is the type of guy that can be really good in that role. And now you push Joey Bosa to more of a pass rushing role, which he has been really good in. So I think it makes a lot of the pieces on this defensive line more sensible. And Larry Ogunjobi, we didn't talk about him at all. He is still a professional rotational body, which is not something this team has in a lot. So that by itself, I think, can also make a difference.
I mean, before his arrival this week, they were calling up someone from the practice squad every single game. So I think that inherently, like you just mentioned, he's a professional guy that's been on an active roster every single game of his career. That should provide them a boost on the D-line.
And this is a defense that has struggled to stop the run. So anybody that looks different than the bodies they have been running out there might be a better option.
Yeah, coming off the Bijan game, everything is going to help in this one. Sean McDermott today talked about how during the bye week, he was home, said he was kind of fidgety. His wife said, "You got to go in?" He said, "Yes, I do." How much does this team deserve to have a little bit of nerves? They've never lost 3 games in a row. I don't think any one of us thought this would be a big game even 3 weeks ago, let alone before the season started. But if they lose to Carolina for a 3rd time in a row, there will be many panic buttons being slammed in Western New York. Is this a season-defining game, or are we making too much of a 2-game losing streak?
I don't know if it's a season-defining game, but to add to your point of what Sean said, it was interesting because I asked Josh Allen, hey, do you feel like this team needs to get back to having more fun? And he was like, absolutely. And it starts with him. We've seen when they're on a roll, Josh Allen is out there and he's having fun. Look, I get it. You lose 2 games. It's not going to look very fun. Josh actually said that his grandma called him and said, I want you to smile again. And Josh kind of laughed and said, I understand that it's kind of a trickle-down effect. He is the leader. He knows that he's the guy that kind of sets the tone in that locker room.
And I also, going back to the Panthers game this week, yes, the results matter in terms of wins and losses, but the process, I think, is what's more important this week. You don't want to see Rico Dowdle or Chuba Hubbard run for 250. If they were to, let's say, limit them to 125 and the passing game looks much better this week, that's what I think is far more important. Obviously, a win is number one objective, but if they look good in the process and fix some of the things, or maybe not all the way, but you see where they can build towards it, that's what I'm looking forward to this Sunday.
I think that's a good point because, look, if they beat the Panthers but it's ugly, I think there's still going to be a lot of fans out there and people in the media going, all right, there's still a lot to work on and a lot of issues with this team right now.
My buzzword is control. Look like your offense is under control. Look like you can have a team that's probably a couple weight classes below you under control. Have the game under control at the end, not having to hope that Matt Prater bangs a 50-yarder to win this thing. And I don't think, season-defining is not the right term. I do think that the season is kind of listing a little bit. The boat's taking on water, and it's kind of off path. You lose this game, yeah, you might go further off path, but you can still right the ship later on. And I think this is an opportunity to get that ship back on the straight and narrow.
Is there a way, though, to win this game and really regain the confidence of this fan base? Because I'm not sure there is. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that if they beat the Panthers and then Kansas City at home and are 6-2, that the fan base still isn't going, well, we've seen them beat Kansas City in the regular season before. I mean, there are a lot of people that think the Bills should be winning the Super Bowl in September and October. And it's just, they've been so successful for so many years now that they're constantly chasing that standard.
I know what you're saying about the chunk of the fan base that every time Sean McDermott appears on social media, they turn around and say he should have been fired years ago. Like, those people I don't think you're going to satisfy. But if you win this game 34-3 and the Panthers run for 20 yards, yeah, I think there's a good chunk of the fan base, the sensible part, that will be like, okay, that was better. And if you beat Kansas City after that, no one will be like, all right, book my tickets for San Francisco in the Super Bowl. But that will still be a huge improvement from what we've seen the last couple of weeks.
I mean, like I said, if the process is sound and the things that you said back in the offseason that you wanted to be better at, you wanted to be better getting after the passer. If they sack Patrick Mahomes 3 times next week, they get down and make life miserable for Andy Dalton or Bryce Young, I think that's a way where you tell the fan base or you show the fan base, listen, this could look different in January because it's looking different in October, and that wasn't the case in previous seasons.
You talk about Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. I think yesterday we all thought it was going to be Andy Dalton, but on Wednesday, Bryce Young at least is appearing at practice without a boot on. Quite simply, does it matter to you which quarterback the Panthers play?
I don't think so. I think maybe Bryce Young presents a little bit of a different challenge because of his ability. He's a little more athletic, his ability to extend some plays. Then you've got Andy Dalton's a little more veteran. There's nothing that Sean's going to throw at him that he hasn't seen in the past. It's all going to come down to stopping their run game, no matter who the quarterback is.
I think it matters, but it won't be to a drastic degree where I'm concerned either way. I think if the point spread right now is like 7.5 with not knowing the quarterback, if Bryce Young's starting, the point spread is going down to 6.5. I don't think it's going to make some drastic difference because of the fact that he is mobile. Maybe 2 or 3 times a game, like Spencer Rattler did, he gets outside the pocket and creates stuff in that manner. But Bryce Young isn't Drake May. I'm not concerned in that way.
Look, if the difference in this game is Andy Dalton or Bryce Young, we are going to have next week is going to be a real problem.
I think that's the best way to sum it up. I'm with you guys. Carl, I don't even think the point spread moves, to be honest, depending on what quarterback it is. The Bills should be able to handle either one of the guys. I will say that the Bills have seen a steady diet of younger, newer quarterbacks. You think about, Michael Penix, Drake May, Spencer Rattler. Those guys might not have a tenth combined the amount of starting experience that Andy Dalton has. So it will be an entirely different challenge for this defense, but I do not think it matters one bit. All right, that's it for this edition of the BKL Nightly Roundtable. For Carl, I'm Josh. I'm Thad. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you guys. Going back to, the conversation of will Bills fans feel happy, content with a win? I honestly think it's going to take a 2+ touchdown win for Bills fans to maybe be back on track, that their season is not entirely over. I know the sky's been falling in Buffalo. That's okay. I think the Bills will get back on track this weekend. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back after the break, Thad is going to answer some questions for you out in Orchard Park. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back to BKL Nightly. It is now time for our weekly mailbag segment. We've got Thad Brown out in Orchard Park right now. It's looking a little rainy out there. Thad, how you holding up out there today?
I mean, I found a roof, so I'm kind of out of the rain, but after like 7 straight weeks of it being awesome, reality has struck hard here in Orchard Park today.
Yeah, we've been lucky with the weather. We really have. All right, we're going to get right into it here. Obviously, the Bills are getting ready for their Week 8 game against the Panthers coming off of this bye week. So we'll get right into question 1 here from ex-user Mark Bouchard. After this Carolina game, do you think Brandon Beane could possibly make a trade move?
I think there's going to be a trade happening one way or another. Brandon Beane really can't help himself when it comes to this. The other part of it, too, for the Bills is that unlike maybe the last couple of trade deadlines, it feels like the Bills have a lot of different needs. They certainly could use help at receiver, pass catcher. Also, cornerback, too, is an issue. But, I mean, safety's not out of the question. You can't have enough pass rushers. If the 2 guys coming back from suspension, Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt, don't click right away, maybe defensive line is another option. Does Matt Milano stay healthy enough to validate the fact that he can be a guy you can depend on at linebacker? So there are arguments to add players at so many different positions. I can't see Brandon Beane not making a move somewhere. Whether it's right after the Carolina game, I'm not sure about, because the trade deadline is another week and change after that. So the Bills may wait a little longer, but I would be 100% stunned if the Bills don't add somebody before November 4th when the deadline hits.
Now we've got a little bit till that deadline, so we're going to stick to this game coming up here. From Blue Sky user Steph Go Bills, how much does it help and hurt both sides when there isn't much film on a player at a new team?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. It's something that we've talked about with players and coaches quite a bit. And what people got to understand is when you scout a team, usually, first of all, you only want to look at the last 4 games they've played. If you're in week 12, you don't really want to go back to week 1 or 2 to get a good read on a player. So, for example, if Andy Dalton plays for the Panthers this week, he hasn't played much this year for Carolina at all. So it's very limited in terms of what kind of scouting you can do with him on this team. The thing is, for a lot of these guys, you're not really worried about all the different positions. So, for example, if you're an offensive lineman for the Bills, what you're just worried about is the defensive line for Carolina. And more to the point, you can learn a lot of things just by looking at that individual player. So if you haven't seen a defensive end, or for example, the Bills are bringing back Hoyt and Ogunjobi this week. Carolina doesn't know how the Bills are going to use those guys, but the Carolina offensive line will spend a lot of time this week looking at what Michael Hoyt was with the Rams, what Larry Ogunjobi was with the Steelers, what they do individually, and gain an amount of knowledge they feel comfortable with from that. Look, you understand that you can't get the whole picture, but no matter how much you scout, you're not going to know everything a team is going to do. So I think when that situation happens, and it could come up with both teams this week, players are looking at individuals they're going to face and how those individuals play, less so than how they fit into the team around them.
Now we know that Carolina comes into this game 4-3. The Bills obviously come into this game off of 2 straight losses. So from ex-user Showtime, if this offense can play clean, turnover-free football, they believe they will win by a touchdown. Now, cleaning up these penalties obviously has been an issue, penalties these last 2 weeks for the Bills. Do you think cleaning those up and cleaning up those turnovers will be enough for Buffalo to get the win this week?
I think it very well might be. I think if you take the same team that played against New England and Atlanta and you take out 60 to 70% of those penalties, I think you could flip one or maybe both of those games. I think turnovers are a factor here as well. The Bills have lost the turnover battle each of the last 2 weeks, something they hadn't done for about a season and a half before that. So I do think that just fixing those areas, separate of any run defense stuff or what the Bills have had trouble with throwing the ball, I think that would be enough to win this particular game. Now, the following week when the Chiefs come here to take on the Bills, you might need to be a little better as a team to win that game. But this week against a Carolina team that I think is better than most people think, even at 4-3, I don't think the Carolina reputation is very high. I like them a little better than maybe the general opinion of the Panthers is. But I think this game, if the Bills can just be clean, just don't beat yourself, I think you can win this game.
Yeah, that's certainly something when you look at these last two losses stood out, that the Bills are losing the turnover battle, not historically been doing that. So if they can clean it up this week, I agree. At least a touchdown will be the win we get from the Bills this weekend. All right, that is going to wrap up this week's weekly mailbag segment. Thank you, Thad. All right, as always, if you have questions for Thad, you can send them to his X's Instagram, Blue Sky, and the News 8 Facebook page. You can find Thad's personal account at ThadBrown7. And then, like I said, the News 8 Facebook page will also have a weekly post where you can send in your questions, and Thad will be sure to look at them, answer them out in Orchard Park. All right, so we've got one more thing to get to. We know that the Bills, the morale might be low, especially for the fans, just having these back-to-back losses with teams that initially, looking at the strength of schedule, looked like to be pretty easy wins. But we know that the Panthers have some strengths, and the Bills are looking to rebound off of this bye week. Now, today, Sean McDermott talked about the bye, talked about just kind of reflecting on heading into this bye with 2 straight losses, a thing that a lot of people said, maybe this is a perfect time for a bye to regroup. But a lot of Bills, post that Falcons loss said, maybe we wish we had a game next week to kind of bounce back from it. Regardless, Sean McDermott talked today with the media about what he did during the bye and kind of what their plan is to rebound from these back-to-back losses.
Had some time off last weekend, and my wife, I was kind of itching a little bit and fidgeting, and my wife's like, hey, you need to go in? I'm like, yeah, I need to go in. and she knows, she used to be a teacher, so she's like, when my classroom wasn't set, you feel that kind of uneasy feeling. Sure, you guys feel the same way when you don't feel great about things. With great clarity, total clarity, I need to go in there and watch some film and just be by myself and just with my thoughts, So it's powerful, right? And you come out of it with better clarity on where we're at and where we need to go.
And my grandma called me and was like, I just want to see you smile, So get back to some of that and in practice, making sure that we're really emphasizing, we score, let's go celebrate, right? It's hard to score in this league. It's hard to win in this league. I feel like that, again, helps build the team, too, when you're taking an extra 15 seconds to our practice to go celebrate and pick somebody up and have a lineman spike the ball. So that's what we're going to get back to.
At what point do we, Josh Allen just always has the right thing to do. Talking about his grandma, just wants to see him smile. What a perfect thing to say, just to keep adding on to Josh Allen, just is obviously a fan favorite. Everything that this man says is just textbook. That's the thing you should have said. And that grandma comment really is just a great another example. All right. Well, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen are looking to bounce back from those 2 losses. We'll see if they can do it this weekend against the Panthers. Week 8, 1 p.m. kickoff. We'll have you covered with some more stuff ahead of this game tomorrow. We'll get your predictions. We'll get some more, talk about just what the Bills need to do to win this game on Sunday. But for now, for Thad Brown, for Josh Reed, for Carl Jones, I'm Rachel Liebert. Thank you so much for watching BKL Nightly.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand. Plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.